Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell, Charlie. I am excited. We've got a new pitch from you, new title, new exciting title. I am very interested to learn
title.
What you're gonna do with Atomic Love Machine.
Atomic Love Machine. Title's fantastic. I love it. And so originally my thought was I'm gonna do like a Frankenstein thing, like the Atomic Love Machine is going to be a robot that like has a human heart in the center of it beating, and it's going to be like a love story between, this creator and his creation, and they're gonna hate each other and love each other, and it's gonna be a whole thing. And then I was like, you know what? That's fucking lame. That's for nerds. We've been doing too much like lovey-dovey fucking think about it, artsy-fartsy shows, all right? I wanted to do a sci-fi murder mystery, all right?
Ooh.
That's what we're doing. So I'm gonna introduce you to the characters as we go along.
Okay.
Right? So we'll start out, right? Opening shot of the show is very much similar to those like old 40s, 50s movies where you have this beautiful dame standing on a train station and all this billowing smoke is like covering her and all the steam. And, it fades away into the back of the shot as we focus on her face and we see the beautiful visage of Eva Montgomery, a brilliant New Walk socialite with money to burn and a radiant desire for power. Ooh. Eva is making headway in becoming a majority stakeholder in the victim's company and has come on this journey in so that she might seduce his wallet and his heart. All right, that's Eva's character.
Okay.
And she has arrived on this train station looking thing to be taken on this wondrous journey. You're like, wondrous journey? Where are they journeying to? Well, she is starting her journey in the city of Shimmer, which is this beautiful, shimmering city that is located on the desert planet of Mercury, right? Oh. You can't really go outside. Imagine like Dubai, but the nature is 1,000 times more severe and the buildings are 1,000 times more opulent and like beautiful and stuff. And so Eva is standing on this, futuristic sci-fi train station, right, in this incredible city of Shimmer, looking over the mountainous canyons and the crevasses, and then just barely seeing over the horizon Fort Montgomery. Right? And that is the military fort that they are traveling to. So from the city, I keep saying shitty of Shimmer, which is just fucking stupid. It's the city of Shimmer, right? They will travel to the fort, right? And everybody going on this journey is some sort of an interesting person, right? But even Montgomery is, in her opinion, the most interesting person. And the victim, I'm only going to refer to him as the victim for right now, just because you'll see why, right? He is this, wealthy doctor who has like this massive corporation that spans the entire galaxy and has been raking in billions. And so she is currently buying up shares in his company, but she understands that it would be better for her if she got, a little bit more friendly with him. So she has been invited on this, maiden voyage of this, land vessel to the fort as a way to kind of ingratiate herself with the victim, right? And so we zoom in on her face, and she's like this gorgeous sort of, almost Judy Garland-esque looking woman. And she's like got tons of bags, and she's got servants who are of course robots because it's the future, right? And she's kind of aloof. but you can tell she's got a little bit of a fire, behind her eyes. She's a little bit, she's exciting. She's, got a bit of a hot streak in her, and so she enters this crazy looking ship that, or land vessel ship. I'm not sure how to describe it. It's, imagine like, a spinning top.
Yeah.
It's imagine a gigantic, like, cylindrical spinning top, right? And that's how it flies, is it spins like a top through the air.
Like a UFO,
but the
kinda?
inside, but the inside of the ship remains, stationary.
Yeah.
Like a UFO as seen through the eyes of like a German expressionist, right? It's all very harsh angles. There's not really that kind of
So it's not
soft edges that you get,
or disc-like. It's
yeah, it's like a giant, like when you get like those cookies, those butter cookies that old people put their sewing equipment inside of.
Those containers, yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of those.
So it's got the little like crinkle waves on the sides. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it's the maiden voyage of this vessel, and this is like a new means by which people can get from the city of Shimmer to the fort. So everybody's very excited about it. It's a very exclusive ride. Eva Montgomery is standing there in the corner smoking a very long cigarette on the train station when the vessel pulls up, right? And she, along with her robotic servants and all the other people who are coming onto the ship, which number 6 in total, pile on, right? They put all their stuff away. They put their bags in their rooms. Eva gets to her room, and she's kind of a little disappointed in the size of it. It's not a tiny room. It's not like she's got the, worst room. She's just like, oh, I was expecting, a
just
full
like a
bath,
room.
like
She
the
doesn't have,
whole
like, a
thing. I
suite.
wanted a whole... Exactly. I wanted a suite, and this is just a room. And so she's a little perturbed, but she thinks to herself, well, the guy who owns this place probably has a much nicer room, and I intend on spending the most of this evening, in his room, right? And so she goes up into the main quarters of this vessel, right? And there's a man sitting at the bar drinking alone. And Eva thinks to herself, well, we've got a couple hours before, like, the main event of the night begins, right? This guy's kind of cute. Why don't I go up and see if I can chat him up? Maybe I can actually enjoy some of the romantic dalliances I'll be having this weekend rather than just, banging this old dude, right? And I don't want Eva to come across as a gold digger. Eva's definitely one of, if not the most intelligent people on this ship, but she also understands her status as a socialite. She is not known for her business acumen, so she kind of plays into that role a little bit. But she's also, fun. She enjoys, like, the occasional fling or one-night stand, and she's like, well, I'm going to be bored on this ship, dealing with all these old men and investors, and there's this guy here, and he's looking kind of cute. I'll go up to him, and I want this shot to very much, like, you can see the guy's back of his head, and you can see his shoulder, but he's kind of leaning over the bar, and our camera stays almost exclusively on Eva's face as she comes up to him, and she's kind of, she's dressed very nicely, and she starts talking, and, like, twisting her hair, and takes her glasses down a little bit. And we can see the guy, we don't see his face, but we see the guy's just like not having it. He's not interested. He's totally, in his own world. And Eva kind of in a huff, after a minute or so, she's like, oh, fine, whatever. And she like leaves. She goes to her room to gussy up for the rest of the night. And our camera holds on the spot that she was. And then the camera slowly turns away and turns towards the man who's sitting. And we zoom in on his
Keanu
face.
Reeves.
I would like you to guess who this
Keanu
man
Reeves.
is. Do you think it's anyone?
I told you, it's Keanu Reeves.
Huh? Nope. It is the one, the only, Jimmy King.
Oh,
that's
my
right,
God,
Jake.
it's a Jimmy
I
King
took one
show.
of your titles, and and I turned it into a Jimmy King
on that
show.
real quick.
You inspired me last week.
Did we ever decide who plays Jimmy King? Mm-hmm. Has that been a thing?
In my mind, I can't remember his name. He's the scared guy in Get Out. He's in what's that movie called? Thank You for Talking.
The scared guy.
Let me look him up.
Get Out. Don't remember.
Yeah, he's the scared guy at the very beginning. Lakeith Stanfield. Sorry to bother you.
Oh, okay.
That guy.
Gotcha.
I've always kind of imagined him as being Lakeith Stanfield. Is just the face that I have in mind, but it could be someone else. It could be anyone. Why?
Well, because I said Keanu Reeves.
No. Sorry, it's not Keanu Reeves. It's Lakeith Stanfield. Right? And he is drinking by himself, and he's thinking to himself, we're going to do a lot. We're not a lot, but we're doing a bit of internal monologue in this show simply because it's kind of trying to give the vibe of like Murder on the Orient Express meets the Maltese Falcon, kind of like this, gritty detective drama, as well as like fun murder mystery. Because there's lots of interesting, fun characters on the ship, right? But Jimmy King's sitting there and he's playing with like this little metal thing on the in his hands, right? It's basically like a little it could slot into some sort of a visor, just this little metal thing that he's playing with in his hands, right? And we can of course assume that this is a piece of H&M's headgear from the end of the last show, Americana Bazaar.
Yeah. Okay.
But he's just holding on to it and thinking and drinking whiskey straight. And he sits there for a few hours, and in the background of the shot, we'll just like have him in the front and kind of do a fast forward thing, and we'll see all the other characters walking by and talking to each other and laughing, and Jimmy's just sitting there, holding the thing, drinking, and maybe occasionally smoking a cigarette.
Can I interrupt briefly?
Right. And after
I just want to know, because Jimmy King is a reoccurring character. You've had 3 other shows that you've pitched with him. Do we need to have seen any of these other shows to understand what's going to go on in this show? Or is this an independent story?
No, because everything that needs to be explained will be explained at some point in this show. And this isn't really, it doesn't tie into the plots of these other shows. It's more, all the Jimmy King shows are about Jimmy King's, emotional maturation, right? And so the first show is him being basically a kid. He's running around with his friends, getting up into all sorts of mischief. The second show is kind of him embracing, his sort of the darker aspects of his personality and of life. The third show is about him, blaming himself for the death of his friend and like kind of moving on from that. But yeah, and then this show, we'll talk about it later. What the show's about, right? And then Jimmy King's sitting and he's drinking when all of a sudden the lights go out, smoke, comes in from the sides, WWE style lighting starts happening, flashing lights, strobe, music comes on, and that is when the victim of this heinous murder, Dr. Montgomery Helpo arrives onto the ship, and he makes this huge, massive introduction, and he looks decrepit. He looks like ancient.
Is this Dr. Montgomery Helpo of insurance company fame?
Yes, this is the company that Eva Montgomery is trying to usurp from Dr. Helpo. Is Helpo Insurance?
That's great. Helpo is a show that I pitched a while ago.
Yes. A very fun show that you pitched and did a bit of a script.
And we never
did a script reading for Helpo,
didn't we? But it
yeah, no, but we did a few scenes and it was fun. It's fun, and I was just like thinking, I was like, you know what? let's make sure that everything's connected. Why not? And so but Dr. Helpo, he holds himself like a much younger man. You know, you kind of see him, you see his face and his body versus the way he talks and acts, and there's kind of this, you know, almost uncanny valley sort of thing. Imagine, you remember years ago, Six Flags had those commercials where they had a really old guy doing like young people dances really excitedly?
No, but...
It's kind of like that, you know, where you can... No, but yeah, you didn't watch TV as a young man. I know. You read books and did push-ups.
Plenty of TV.
That was what you did. Nah. But like he's kind of got that weirdness, and everybody's taken aback a little bit by him, but he's just so charismatic. You know, imagine Gene Wilder in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, right? He's just got this sort of like, limp, but like he's got a cane, but he's got so much energy that he barely uses it. He's got this sort of magnetic, crazy, cool energy to him. And so he explains the point of this trip, right? He talks about the, you know, various natural wonders that they will see over the 3-day journey they take from the city of Shimmer to Fort Montgomery. And a man leans over to Jimmy King while he's talking and says, "Fort Montgomery, Dr. Montgomery Helpo, Jesus Christ, can you be more full of himself?" Right? And this guy, you know, he's kind of got like a more of a cynical attitude, and Jimmy, like, he does that snort that you do when you like think something's funny but not that funny, just you know, takes another drink. And the man who said that to him like asks for another, same thing that he's having, right? And these two men are sitting drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes while they watch this performance, and he explains, we will be going by Mount Glass, which is found within the, you know, Sea of Sand, right? Oh, blah, 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 and all of the crazy, cool, you know, natural things they'll see on this trip, which he is hoping to franchise into a sort of, think, you know, train line, but of the future, right? Like sort of ferry-esque thing where you take a trip from the city of Shimmer to Fort Montgomery, and there's, you know, hotels set up there. And
situation.
Obviously, Montgomery Helpo has... Exactly. And this is a very exclusive first time out of the cruise, you know, because these people, everyone here has a job or is very, you know, influential and important, right?
Why is Jimmy King
And Jimmy
there? King
kind of looks him up and down and takes another drink. Yeah. And he looks the other guy who is also drinking whiskey up and down, and he looks much closer to Jimmy King's level of, like, wealth and degeneracy than he does to any of the other people here. But we'll see later on that everyone here is a fucking lunatic, and they've all got their own personality quirks, right?
And they all want to kill Dr. Helpo.
And after Montgomery Helpo, after Dr. Helpo gives them this huge thing, he, you know, begins to walk away, and he puts his arm around Eva Montgomery, and she walks with him, and she's kind of like, you know, not focused on Jimmy or any of the other guests. She's just very much interested in talking with Dr. Helpo in his quarters, right? And so the night goes on, and that's when the man who was talking with Jimmy before introduces himself as Detective Henry John, a hard-boiled Martian detective who has joined this voyage as part-time police escort and part-time PI for Dr. Helpo, just in case anyone was interested in taking any of his, you know, state secrets or his, you know, private technology or anything like that. He just figured it would be better to have a detective on, and so he's hired Detective Henry John to do the job. And Henry and Jimmy get along pretty well, right? They're very similar guys, but they've also got a kind of begrudging respect for each other because, you know, they're talking and Jimmy talks about himself, and it's like, yeah, you know, I'm a poet, I'm a writer, I'm a an observer of the world around me, and this is the first time I've been off-world in quite a few years. Detective John tells him about himself. Oh, I'm a detective on Mars, right? And that's when Jimmy kind of gets a little bit like, oh, and Jimmy starts talking about his utter disdain for police, and all that stuff, how he hates cops and they do nothing but facilitate the rich and their, jackbooted policies against everyone else on the planet. And that's when Detective John fires back with his dislike for political dissidents who do nothing but ruin the systems they have, that are already created but never create their own, right? And that sort of thing. They have this like back and forth where they both kind of criticize each other's lives and professions, but they criticize them in a way that is accurate to a point, as well as being, I wrote here, there's a friendly tension in the conversation that they're having, right? And they decide, it's been a few hours, they're, a few bottles deep. They decide, well, it's probably time to go to bed, right? And so John and Jimmy shake hands and they decide to part ways, and they start walking to their own rooms, stumbling, I should say, because they are both pretty drunk at that point. They start stumbling to their rooms when they hear a blood-curdling scream coming from Montgomery Helpo's room, and they run in there. Right? Oh my God. What's happened? Someone hurt? That was a woman's scream, right? What's going on? And they see Dr. Montgomery Helpo with a gigantic butcher knife sticking out of his back, butt naked over the toilet. That's right. Dr. Montgomery Helpo has been murdered. Dun dun dun. And we see Eva Montgomery, and she's in her, she's not in the bed, right? She's not naked. They haven't, done anything untoward. But she is kind of, in a nightgown. She's, in her sleeping clothes, and she said she's come to say goodnight to Dr. Helpo. But then she finds his dead body, right? And that's what she explains to Detective John and Jimmy, and because they are the two people they spent the evening with, they both know that the other didn't do it. And so they decide, right, drunk as the day is long, we're gonna team up, we're gonna solve this case. But tonight, I'd say we all go to our rooms, we'll let the robot pick up the body, and we'll see in the morning. So they decide we'll let the robots deal with the body and cleaning everything. We'll examine it in the morning, right? Let's do interviews tomorrow, right? And then we see the robots pick up the body, right? And take it into one of the side corridors, right? And Jimmy decides to watch the main room for the night and switch off with Detective John in the morning, right, just to make sure nobody leaves their rooms and nobody does anything that would hinder the investigation. And so that's how the episode 1 ends, is with Jimmy sitting in a reclined chair, staring at the doors of the 4, let me just count up how many suspects we have. Right? And so there's 4 people staying in there, excluding Jimmy, and he's just staring at the 4 doors at night, drinking and smoking and playing with this little. And I can just tell you now, it is the final piece of H&M, right? This is all he has left. It's a little part of his head piece, right? And it's the only thing he has to remember him by, and he's holding it, drinking and smoking, while he's looking at these 4 doors and knowing that the killer could be behind any of them. Right? End of episode 1. He doesn't talk to it, but you can tell he's thinking at it. Right? If he had mental powers, he would be talking to it, but he doesn't talk to it simply because he's not talking very much. because Jimmy is in this, like, such this deep depression about the death of H&M, right? At his, like, not even depression about the death of H&M. He is still sad about it, but he's kind of, like, moved on. But he's in this, like, such a lonely state. He has decided that he will no longer allow people into his life. He will be alone until he dies. And so he's just kind of so pulled into himself that the act of speaking is laborious to him, and he wouldn't do it unless someone is talking to him, right? Unless there's a purpose to it, he's not talking. So he's thinking and he's drinking. Thinking and drinking. That's your show for next week.
Oh boy.
And so that's the end of episode 1. Are you sufficiently intrigued? Do you want to know what happens next?
What if I said no? What would you do?
I would say, okay, well then fuck it. I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story.
Okay. Well, tell us.
Yeah. So the next day, John switches with Jimmy for watch. Jimmy goes and he sleeps for a few hours. He gets up and he and John convene. They have coffee. It's first thing in the morning. No one else is awake. And this is when all of the interviews happen, right? And this is when we're really meeting our colorful cast of characters. So there are 3 people on the ship that are being interviewed. 5 in total, including Jimmy and John. So, we've already met Eva Montgomery. She's kind of, we know all about her. So, the interview is basically just a rehash of the information I've given you already. She explains, I'm a New Walk socialite. And Jimmy, people kind of underestimate him. So, he has his finger on the pulse of this sort of thing. And he talks about, last night you were very friendly with Dr. Helpo. What's that about? And then John comes in with his, information because he knows she's been buying shares. And that's when she explains, she kind of drops the socialite act. And you can almost tell there's, a level of sociopathy to it. Like, the switch flips in her head and she kind of loses that sort of glimmer in her eyes. And she's like, fine, I was trying to get the old man's company, Helpo insurance is worth, $4.5 quadrillion, right? I've purchased half of the estate as of now, and I'm just trying to make sure I can get the other half without some sort of legal, gladiatorial bout, for the entirety of the galaxy to watch and insult me for, right? And so John is still not sold on Eva's innocence, but Jimmy is confident that she's not the killer, right? And
he jumps she might have. She's got the motive, but Jimmy's like, I don't see it. I've seen a lot of killers in my day, but,
exactly,
and she ain't one.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just giving you how we'll do it in the show is how they always do it, which is cut back to, question, answer between all 3 of the suspects, but I'm just giving you all of the information in 3 blocks because that makes this easier. Yeah. And then our second suspect is Eric Herm. Now, Eric Herm is what do I have here? A ruthless egg baron on the outer reaches. He sees himself as above or better than his fellow cryo train riders. It's not a cryo train. I changed that, so ignore that. He loves hard-boiled eggs at all occasions and hates strawberry flavoring.
This guy did it.
Exactly. So Eric Herm is an egg baron, right? His whole thing is that he dresses like an egg. So imagine, he wears an all-white suit, white tie, white shoes, white belt, right? But the laces on the shoes and the socks are egg yolk yellow. The shirt is egg yolk yellow. The watch is egg yolk. He dresses like a fucking egg. Huh?
I said, what the fuck?
What?
You got an egg boy?
He's an egg baron. He's an egg baron. This is what he does. He's an egg boy. He's in charge of distributing eggs throughout the outer reaches of the galaxy. He's one of 6 egg barons that exist, and he has a complicated relationship with Helpo and Industries, right? And we get his, conversation. People talk to him, that they're interviewing him, and he strikes them as a fucking lunatic. Like, in the 5 to 10 minute interview, he's eaten 5 hard-boiled eggs. He just fucking loves them, right? And he talks about his, rights as a business owner and as a baron, and he talks about himself in this way that makes it seem as if he thinks he is above all of these people, and all while he's blustering about his importance and how much he's sacrificed to get where he is in life. He's spitting fucking egg everywhere because he's eaten a dozen hard-boiled eggs in the last 2 hours, right? He is a fucking mess. And John and Jimmy both agree, this fucking guy couldn't have done it, right? This guy's a lunatic.
He's an egg.
But he's not a murderer. He's a fucking egg bait. He's a fucking egg. Right? And so they both kind of they get sick of him and they just send him away, and they send in the next suspect, right? And this is the final suspect. They don't think that the last 2 people did it. This person must have done it, right? Norok, the Fleecer, a horrific and cruel battle commander that has waged war across the galaxy for decades. His only enemy that remains undefeated is the dreaded diabetes, right? So this guy, Norok, is a battle commander from the outer reaches of space, and he's waged war for decades. And they call him the Fleecer because his, truest and most vicious battle tactic was that whenever he would conquer an enemy and take their leadership, he would fleece them. So he would cut off their outer layer of skin. They call it, we would call it flaying. He calls it fleecing, right? And imagine this sort of space barbarian guy, right? So he's imagine a Viking, sort of. He's got big fleece pauldrons on. He's, not really, he's wearing a shirt, right? He's older, but he's still big. But he's also lost a foot to diabetes, and he's got an eye patch, and he is he's retired at this point. He's not fleecing anyone, but he still has this sort of angry Conan the Barbarian-esque, personality. He doesn't have the most diction. He's not the most well-spoken man in the world, right? He's covered in scars and wounds, and he's still obsessed with, his glory days of battle. But he is not the kind of man to stab someone in the back, much less with a butcher knife, right? That is a coward's weapon. That is a chef's tool. I, Norok the Fleecer, only use the finest of steel. That sort of thing. And so, after interviewing all 3 of the suspects, John and Jimmy are still kind of baffled. They're who the fuck killed this guy, right? Because Norok, it seems like they all have no motive, right? Eva is going to take over the company, but she said it herself. It would be a lot easier if she took over the company while he was alive. Eric Herm is a fucking egg mate, and Norok, the Fleecer, is a man who craves combat. He doesn't crave assassination, right? He wouldn't do that. If he wanted to kill Helpo, he would have challenged him to a duel. He wouldn't have stabbed him in the back while he was taking a piss, And so John and Jimmy decide, well, we're obviously not getting anywhere with the interviews. Let's just go look at the body. And that's when they discover that the autodocs, the robotic medical staff, has, as per Dr. Helpo's requests, destroyed his corpse. They've cremated it, along with the murder weapon. Having not... Because they're robots. They don't know any better, and so they cremated the body and got rid of it. And that's how episode 2 ends, with our two main characters, Jimmy King and John, being kind of like, what the fuck, right? What's going on? And episode 3 begins, right? All of the cast is in the main room, right? And this episode's definitely a bottle episode, right? They're not leaving this room, really. The camera's not leaving this room. And they're all arguing, right? And this is when they're kind of like putting together sides, and people are starting to like get on one person's side or another side, right? Eva has kind of figured out that Jimmy and John are the people who are to be trusted. Like, they're the guys who are going to solve this mystery. And she's still kind of fascinated with Jimmy. She's no longer interested in him in any sort of physical manner, right? Because there's been a murder. She's not interested in getting laid. But she's like, this guy is so strange because he has like the soul of a poet, but he is the mouth of a sailor, right? He curses and whenever he talks like a fucking motherfucker. But you'll hear him describe something every once in a while, and it'll be like gorgeous. And she's kind of like she's just like, what the hell is this guy? Mm-hmm. And so this episode is kind of Eva discovering more about Jimmy King, right? She has her, for lack of a better term, I'm just going to say her iPad come up with a different thing if the show gets made. But she discovers like all of his prior adventures. She figures out like there was this guy that he spent his, years with, H&M, and he's gone now. And then and she's maybe reading some of his poetry and some of his work and seeing the destruction he has wrought as well as the people he has helped, because he does both in equal measure. And she is kind of like on his side. And Norok and Eric Herm are both like, how the fuck dare you accuse us of, killing Dr. Helpo? We're not murderers, and how do we even know it wasn't you two, right? You know that you weren't the murderers, but we don't know anything, right? And so that's when Norok and Detective John kind of get into a bit of an argument, right? And Norok, being a blustering space barbarian, he makes it physical, believe it or not, and he injures John. Not so badly that it's like, oh my god, he's gonna die or anything, but he like punches him in the face and like sprains or dislocates his shoulder, right? And so John is in a sling for the rest of the show. And that's when Jimmy he calms everyone down. He kind of mediates the situation. He gets everyone on one side or the other side of the main room, and they all kind of calm down and kind of figure out a way that they can all stay civil, right? And just as everything's kind of calmed down and everything has become more civilized, that's when, dun dun dun, a malfunction in the hydraulics of this ship begins to present itself. And they begin to, descend very rapidly into the Sea of Sand, right?
Yeah. And
the Sea of Sand is kind of a misnomer in a way. It's really, imagine molten red hot glass bubbling and sloshing around as if it is the ocean, right? Oh. And then in the center of this bubbling molten glass sea is this massive, what do they call it? A plateau. This massive glass plateau that you can see perfectly through, right? And this is one of the wonders of this trip, but this wonder has turned into a danger very quickly.
Yeah.
As the ship crashes into the molten glass sea. And all of the characters have to get together and they have to kind of like use their individual skills and work as a team to figure out, a way to get the ship back and started. And this is when we kind of display a sort of a relationship, like a friendly relationship between Eva and Jimmy, right? She's learned a bit about him. He knows a bit about her. And Eva is the smartest person on the ship. And so she is able to repair the hydraulics and get them back into the air, right? But not after a lot of close calls and Nordok and John having to hold back the molten glass from pouring in, but it like seeps in through the edges of one of the doors, and John starts to burn and sizzle, but he refuses to move, like his skin. But he refuses to move because that would mean that everyone died. And this is like when Nordok kind of gains a bit more respect for him, and there's kind of like a begrudging respect by the time they get back up into the air. Right? And as this happens, they get back up into the air, and then the lights go off. And then the lights come back on, and Detective Henry John is dead. In the middle of the main room. That's right. Holy shit. Exactly. Like, what? Everyone's taken aback. And Nordok is immediately like, I didn't do it. I don't know what the fuck happened, right? There's no visible means by which he died, right? And that's when Jimmy gets an idea and he pours out the bottle of whiskey that they've both been drinking, right? He pours it out and he sees at the bottom is this kind of shimmering, silvery substance. And he's like, I recognize this from a job I did in Mississippi in the deep south, right? This is poison. This is nanotechnology poison, right? It seeps into your bloodstream and it clogs your brain, right? It doesn't look to Ed Corner like you died of anything besides a brain aneurysm, but this was on purpose. But he doesn't know why he's still alive. They've both been drinking this bottle of whiskey. He's drunk more, if anything, right? So why is Jimmy still alive? And he has no idea, right? But they start to figure out that maybe none of them are the murderers, right? Maybe it's a thing. Oh, I have an idea. So go back, rewind. We're rewinding to the interviews, right? Yeah. And Herm offers both of Jimmy and John a hard-boiled egg, but Jimmy refuses and John eats the hard-boiled egg. Just keep that in mind.
So I knew it was Eggman. Eggman's a bad man.
Mm-hmm. So, that's when, like, Jimmy's like, oh my god, I was just starting to like this guy, and now he's dead, right? And he won't let the auto doc take him because he's like, I don't want him fucking cremated, right? And so, they all kind of, like, they put the detective in his room, and then Jimmy starts to like just tear through the corridors, right? Where all the robotic servants go, he starts to investigate those, and he discovers, where all of the robots live in the walls and sort of like the control panels and all this stuff. And he looks down and he sees that there is no crematorium on the ship.
Ooh,
right? And as he sees that, and then he's hit on the back of the head and knocked out. End of episode 3.
Oh.
Episode 4, he wakes up tied to a bed, right? Nordok, Eva, and Herm are all there, right? With makeshift weapons, right? Like Nordok has, a table leg. Eva has like a kitchen knife, and Herm's just eating more eggs, right? And they've determined, it was Jimmy. Jimmy, you did it. You've been drinking the whiskey, but it didn't kill you because it's fake. And you were telling us that the whiskey had the poison in it to get us off your trail, right? And Nordok's kind of leading this inquisition, right? And Eva's kind of, you can tell that she's like not really confident about this decision. She's not sure if Jimmy did it, but Nordok and Herm made the case very, they were like, well, we're gonna knock him out and tie him up and probably kill him if he throws a fit. So you can either help us do that or we can knock you out too, right? And so she just goes with them. And Jimmy is obviously, he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Of course I didn't kill him, right? And he explains all of the obvious reasons that he couldn't have killed him, right? And then just as he's about to explain to them, no, you don't understand. Helpo's still alive. That's when all the lights turn out and a neon green gas begins to seep from the edges of the room, right? Seep from the edges of the room and knocks all of them out. Our next scene, they wake up and they're all like strapped down, heads back, eyes pulled open, like a Clockwork Orange style.
Yeah.
In a secret a secret bunker that is built underneath the rest of the ship. They're still flying.
Oh shit.
And everyone's locked up. Nordok, Eva, Jimmy, John, not John. John's dead. And Herm, right? They're all locked up, and they're looking at the center of this room because it's a cylinder, right? And they're all looking, and they see this like table descend from the roof, and on it is a like this sort of unknowable mound covered with a sheet. And out of the darkness walks a decrepit and ancient Dr. Montgomery Helpo, right? Oh. His body now matches the his face from the beginning. And he, talks about his plan about, I have been, creating the perfect lover. I have created my perfect wife to spend all of eternity with. I have been using all of you to scan your brainwaves and put them into this robot because all of you have elements that I want in my great love, right? I want Nordok's ferocity. I want Herm's, I want Nordok's ferocity. I want Eva's like intelligence and femininity. I want John's like inquisitive mind, and I want Jimmy's like his artistic and sort of out of the box thoughts, right? And they're all like looking over, and he's decrepit and ancient, and he explains that the figure they saw before was a robot, right? It was a synthetic being that has been fitted with his face, and he was controlling it using his mind, and he's been down here this entire time just watching on the TV, as they, solve all sorts of problems. And that's why they crashed into the lake or the Sea of Sand, is because Helpo wanted to see if all of these disparate personalities could work together for a common goal, right? Because that's what he's planning on doing, is putting all of these disparate personalities into this. And he rips off the sheet, and it's this gorgeous, perfect, silver robotic woman, right? Imagine the robot from Metropolis, almost. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh.
The old movie Metropolis?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could put all of your personalities into the atomic love machine. And everyone looks at him and is like, really? That's the name you picked? The atomic love machine?
Oh, you're making fun of my title?
And no, I'm making fun of Dr. Helpo because I actually love the Atomic Love Machine. And he says, well, you're all gonna die, so shut up, right? He gets a little defensive. It's just a little joke, right? And he explains like, oh, and of course, I needed somebody up there who I could trust, who would be doing my bidding. And he flips a switch, and Eric Herms, all of his restraints give out, and he steps down and takes a bite of a hard-boiled egg, and he looks very pleased with himself because he tricked everyone into thinking he was just this stupid, ridiculous, egg-obsessed, lunatic. When in actuality, he's a very intelligent, egg-obsessed lunatic, right? And Eric, he turns to him, he's like, yes, you all thought I was insane, but actually, I'm the sanest man here. Ha 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 ha. He takes another bite of a fucking boiled egg. Yeah. Maybe it's like an ostrich egg, and he's eating it like an orange. Oh, that would be fucking horrible. I love that. Like, it's a huge egg, and he's biting into it like an apple. Sorry. And then he looks over at Dr. Helpo, and he says, like, I noticed, Helpo, you didn't really incorporate any of my brainwaves into this robot. And Helpo looks up at him and he says, it's because you're a fucking idiot. And then he shoots him in the stomach, right? And Eric Herm is on the ground bleeding out, and his blood is kind of like, it's a yolk. Like, his blood is like yellow and viscous and thick like an egg yolk, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna die here because I'm an idiot, right? And Helpo explains that, like, yeah, I know John died, but he was getting a little too close to the truth. He was about to figure it out, so Eric here needed to take him out, and he pokes Eric with his cane in, like, the bullet hole, and he's like, oh, And that's when Helpo explains the final element of his plan, in which he needs to flip this switch so that it can fully remove the brainwaves and, like, and also, like, thought and kill everyone here, remove the brainwaves from these people and transfer them into the atomic love machine, his great love. And so that's when he flips the switch, shock, electricity, that sort of thing, the things on their sides of their heads and in their eyes and like all that begins to vibrate and shock and all this stuff. And, one by one, Nordic, like, he dies, he gives out, saying, like, remember my will to live, my fight, right? Like, I will be, recognized in Valhalla and all that shit. And then Eva, she looks over at Jimmy and she just says, like, mouths like, I'm sorry, or something like that. Or like, I'm scared, something sad. And then she dies. And just as Jimmy is about to die, his headset explodes off of his head, right? Leaving a massive scar down the side of his face, right? And it's revealed that it's that little piece of H&M. He wears it on the side of his head where H&M did, and that intercepted the signal from the headgear and causes it to explode off of his face. Oh. H&M saving his life just one more time, right? Damn. And that's when he, jumps down and he's got this imagine, when people get struck by lightning, they have that cool, like, scar. Imagine that, but goes down his eye and over his lip and down his chin, just basically as across his whole face, right? And he gets up, he knocks out, Helpo, and he just starts, like, wailing on him on the ground. And he gets up, he kind of shoots up, and he's like, I don't want to be a violent person. I don't want to kill anyone, right? And then he looks over and he sees that the atomic love machine, she has come to life, right? Eve and the brainwaves of Nordock and Eva Montgomery were enough to bring her to life. And she wakes up and opens her eyes and she looks at Jimmy, and Jimmy looks at her, and he sees this, like, new life, pure and untouched, but still so experienced and wise, right? And then he looks down at Helpo, and he's just this whimpering fool, crying on the ground, begging for his life. And that's when he looks up at the atomic love machine and explains to her, like, this is your creator. He created you so that he could love for all eternity, right? He did this by killing friends of mine, by hurting innocent people, right? And she looks down, and we kind of see that same glimmer that we saw in Eva Montgomery's eyes, right? Flash across hers. And then she picks up Helpo by his shoulder, stands him up, looks him in the eyes, and says, "Thank you, Father," and then snaps his neck. Right? Helpo drops to the floor. Jimmy and the Atomic Love Machine climb up onto the main deck of the ship, and they finally land in Fort Montgomery. And they step off of the ship together, hand in hand, you know, seeing what this new adventure has brought for them. Walking off into the sunset.
Damn.
The Atomic Love Machine.
The Atomic Love Machine. All right, Charlie.
Yeah.
Who are you casting?
And I will say, well, Eva Montgomery, I was thinking Saoirse Ronan. Because I also want the Atomic Love Machine to be, like, have more of Eva Montgomery's personality than Norok's, but still Norok comes in there. Norok, I was thinking like maybe Jack Black, you know?
Okay.
Like big Viking beard, hair, Jack Black style. For Eric Herm, I have no fucking idea, man. He's a big egg. He's a big egg man. I don't know who you cast as that. And I want to say I'm open to not calling the robot the Atomic Love Machine and only calling the show the Atomic Love Machine and coming up with a better name for the robot. Would you want to do that?
I don't know.
Or is she just the ALM?
Unless you got a name in mind right now, we could just go with Atomic Love Machine, but you can always change it.
Yeah, we can always change it later. I think she's Atomic Love Machine, but that was like the name that Helpo gave her, and she just goes by ALM. And yeah, that's who I'm casting for Atomic Love Machine. What did you think of the show?
I liked it. I didn't expect a Jimmy King story.
Yeah,
it's
fun.
I'm glad we got
it's
one.
Fun.
You've now hit 4 episodes of the same
Jimmy King
series
saga.
Yeah. 4 episodes
Character.
Of Jimmy King saga.
And you have a special surprise for us? You told me at the beginning
but
of the
you've
show?
gone on an hour here now, and I feel like maybe I should wait for it. So the next episode I'll do it because we went on too long. But
all right, cool.
I do have a special surprise next episode. Little segment.
Next
A
episode.
little fun segment at the end of next episode. So that's your tease.
I'm excited. Yeah. I'm sorry this episode went on for so long, but I apparently had more to say than I thought I did. Which I think is good. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me has always been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. Remember, we will be here right back here next week with a brand new television series for you to imagine and enjoy. And I'm sorry if my audio was a little weird. I flew today and they lost my microphone, so there's nothing I can do about it. But thank you all for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Don't do that. Just keep it normal. Normal's good.